Amy Woods arrived in Sunvale during the rainy season. This seaside, foreign town was brimming with vibrant scenes. Pigeons pecked at corn under the eaves, and lush, verdant trees burst with large, white blossoms, their fragrance permeating the town's air. Rain washed over the streets, and the post-war rebuilt houses were all painted with snow-white walls and colorful roofs. Beneath the eaves, elderly people leisurely sipped tea. The local girls wore long, black braids and brightly colored clothes, each with a lightness of movement like birds. A bakery on the roadside had just baked fresh bread, its sweet aroma attracting a group of children on their way home from school. She remembered Leo Parker's description in a letter 5 years ago, saying that the place had been bombed almost flat. People had to dig holes and live underground, lining up for rations, the whole family huddling under a thick blanket to get through the winter. His journalist team had to gnaw on hardtack every day, and even when going to the bathroom, they had to watch out for birds or bombers flying overhead. At the time, she had laughed it off and shared it with her whole family. Who knew that a week later, she would receive the devastating news of Ryan Sullivan's death, and a month later, his proposal ring sent from afar. Note, here, is translated as Ryan Sullivan to maintain consistency with later revelations, and the C remarks note. Life was so unpredictable, life and death so impermanent. It was the kind of scene you saw on TV, where the male lead called his sweetheart amidst the sounds of gunfire, declaring his undying love and how happy he was to die loving her. The audience watched with tears in their eyes, without having to pay any painful price in reality. The driver stopped the car in front of an ordinary 3-story building. The Red Cross logo stood out, brand new and eye-catching. A familiar face in a lab coat came out to welcome her, Dr. Zhang from the hospital. Later implied as Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson took her to see the dorm. A small room, approximate 200 square feet, with a bed and a desk. He pointed to the remaining space and joked, "Don't let the size fool you. It's just enough room for a card table. Getting a game of poker together won't be a problem." Amy Wood smiled, unpacked her luggage, and settled in. The rain continued until dusk. The roof was leaking, and Amy Woods found a basin to catch the drips. Drip, 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 time flowed slowly by with the crisp sound. Nostalgia for past joys felt like a dream. She thought of her middle school classroom. The southern town had plenty of rain, and every rainy season it was humid and hot, leaving you feeling sticky all over, as if coated in glue. The school was simple and crude, the classrooms lacked ventilation, and mosquitoes bit, making you itch all over. Back then, Ryan Sullivan would quietly move his stool closer, open the Vicks VapoRub, and carefully rub it on her. After evening study hall, Ryan Sullivan always walked her home first, then made a big detour to get to his own place. The roads were dark and bad, and he wouldn't get home until late, but even so, he would still appear promptly the next day at Wood's house. A handsome young man, impeccably dressed, his shirt always washed snow-white. Holding his bicycle, he would say to her, "Hurry, we're going to be late." After Ryan Sullivan died, she often couldn't sleep. She often heard Ryan Sullivan speaking in her ear in the middle of the night, "Wear more clothes when you go out, eat less fast food, don't stay up late." Every sentence was a reminder. Then she would wake up with a start, unable to fall back asleep. Looking at the empty room, she was all alone. She couldn't understand how they had been happily planning their future, but in the blink of an eye, he could no longer return to her side. For the next month, she and Mr. Johnson followed the medical team to carry out infectious disease prevention work in various medical blind spots, each carrying a large first aid kit, walking up mountains and down fields. Mr. Johnson told her that after working hard for this month, if you held out your hand, only your fingernails would still be white. Ryan Sullivan had also described the sun there in a phone call. He said, "If I put a towel on my hand and hold it in the sun, it only takes 5 minutes for the skin underneath to be 3 shades lighter when I take it off." Funny, huh? Everyone's getting tanned like chameleons. Ryan Sullivan was the type who could find joy even when playing the pipa under a bitter tree. Being with him meant endless laughter, and life was so interesting. A nurse knocked on the door. "Dr. Woods, there's a woman who's been in a car accident, hit her head. Can you come and help?" Amy Woods rushed over immediately. Lying on the hospital bed was a young local woman, her face covered in blood, but still visibly beautiful. Tawny skin, a straight nose, large eyes closed tightly, fragile and touching, like a pure white flower blooming on a lush green branch. Wow! Even Amy Woods, as a woman, was moved. After examining her, she said to the admiring male doctors beside her, "Don't worry, fractured right wrist, a concussion. It's not serious, I'll treat her wounds." The nurse added, "She's 2 months pregnant." Amy Woods hurriedly called out, "Where's Mr. Johnson?" "He's the obstetrician." Everyone surrounded the woman, extremely nervous. Being beautiful has its advantages. It's easy to get attention and care. Amy Woods looked at the unconscious woman, her heart surging. Back then, had Ryan Sullivan also lain injured in a strange hospital, with no one recognizing him, no one able to help him, left to let his life slip away? It was already night when she finished treating the woman. The secluded village was surrounded by darkness. It was a moonless night. Amy Woods took off her mask and went outside for some air. The rain was falling softly, and the misty air was full of the cool fragrance of flowers. The cool breeze blew, making her shiver. At this moment, she seemed to hear Ryan Sullivan say from behind her, "The spring night rain is the coldest, yet you insist on coming out and suffering. As a doctor, you should know better than to neglect your health." Amy Woods smiled bitterly. "I'm going back now." She had become accustomed to talking to this imaginary ghost. The other party said again, "Then come over here quickly." Only then did Amy Woods realize that something was wrong. Someone was indeed speaking. It wasn't a hallucination brought on by her distracted state. The voice was low and gentle, so familiar that she wouldn't mistake it even after 50 years. She turned around abruptly. A figure stood in the shadows of the balcony, vaguely tall, with a snow-white shirt, habitually putting his right hand in his pants pocket. Her whole body tensed up, and she almost blurted out, "Ryan Sullivan? Ryan Sullivan?" "I'm not," the man said. Those words jolted Amy Woods awake. The other person stepped out of the shadows into the light, and Amy Woods saw his face clearly. He was an Asian man with regular features, about her age, and a slender build. He looked somewhat familiar, but clearly wasn't Ryan Sullivan. Amy Woods smiled in disappointment. "You're not. Are you sure?" The man smiled. Amy Woods apologized in embarrassment. "I'm sorry." The man held out his hand. "I should be thanking you. They said my wife and child are both fine." She went out to buy something and was hit by a motorcycle as soon as she stepped onto the road. "We're a bit far from the hospital where she works, so they sent her here." He took out a business card. Ryan Sullivan, like Amy Woods, was also an employee of a charitable organization. Support personnel like them were not uncommon in this area. So, he was the owner of that flower. "What a handsome couple," Amy Woods said. "She's also a doctor?" Ryan Sullivan nodded. "My W. Ife and I both work for the same charitable organization. I teach at a school, and she repairs the damaged limbs of people after the war." "How long have you lived here?" "Almost 5 years now." Amy Woods clicked her tongue. "I thought it was usually a 1-year rotation. My wife is a local, and I don't have any relatives back home in the States, so I settled down here," Ryan Sullivan said with a smile. Amy Woods suddenly felt a burst of palpitations, not for any other reason than that his smile looked so much like Ryan Sullivan, with the left corner of his mouth tilting to one side and his eyes curving. But as soon as the smile faded, his whole face returned to its usual unfamiliarity, leaving no trace. "Ryan Sullivan, Ryan Sullivan." Amy Woods repeated the name over and over in her mind, finding it strangely familiar. But she immediately told herself, "Stop dreaming and look around you more. Everything is so real. The deceased is gone. Haven't you wasted enough time in the past 5 years mourning him?" Mrs. Parker contacted her from time to time, always asking, "Do you have a boyfriend yet?" "Not yet." "You should look forward." Her sister, Lily Woods, was even more direct. When her attempts to introduce her to men failed, she scolded, "Does the Parker family want to build a memorial arch for you in the city center, so you're going to keep his memory alive like this?" Everyone thought she was out of her mind. She asked the heir, Ryan Sullivan, "What do you think I should do?" Then she heard Ryan Sullivan answer her, "Forget me, you have your own life." Alas, it was easier said than done to forget. Those years of being together day and night, the bits and pieces of deep affection and contentment, had already taken root, engraved in her mind. She even kept the notes that Ryan Sullivan had copied for her in college, neatly arranged and placed in the bookcase. Among the countless fragments of memories, there was always one scene, Ryan Sullivan riding his dial-up I-8 old car, carrying her through the summer streets and alleys, the shadows of the trees dappled like a net, enveloping the two of them. One summer vacation, Ryan Sullivan accompanied his parents on a trip, and they were separated for a month. One night, Amy Woods suddenly heard a noise on the Woods family balcony. When she went out to take a look, it turned out to be Ryan Sullivan throwing pebbles at the Woods family balcony from downstairs. Their eyes met for a moment, and he climbed up to the second floor along the drain pipe. Amy Woods smiled and said, "We're just like Romeo and Juliet." The two embraced tightly. After Ryan Sullivan's death, she always kept a pair of slippers for him at the door. In her imagination, on some evening with the sky full of colorful clouds, she would suddenly hear the key turning in the lock, the door would open, and he would appear, dusty and tired, throwing his bag aside and walking in with a patter of slippers. Perhaps Ryan Sullivan was the lotus separated from her by water, perhaps he was the swallow flying away from her, perhaps he was a willow branch she casually picked in a previous life, a fortune she wanted but couldn't get. They only had a short period of. She remembered that at that time, Ryan Sullivan was so excited to tell her that he had been selected to go to the war zone for an interview. He spoke with great animation, but she listened with apprehension. Bullets had no eyes. Who could guarantee his safety? He left like that, so full of confidence. Every time they contacted each other, he would always say, "Be patient and wait. When the war is over, I'll come back." 3 reporters who went with him died, and 2 went missing. It was a sensational tragedy. Amy Woods suddenly trembled. She had heard this name before. He was the reporter who had disappeared with Ryan Sullivan in that incident. Amy Woods had just rushed out of the office when she saw Ryan Sullivan walking towards her, smiling and greedy. Her. "Dr. Woods," he said, "Mila is awake. I was just about to ask you to go see her." Amy Woods stepped forward and grabbed him, asking, "Is your real name Ryan Sullivan?" Ryan Sullivan was taken aback and replied, "That is indeed my real name." "Where did you work back home in the States?" Ryan Sullivan looked puzzled. Amy Woods withdrew her hand. "Mr. Sullivan, please forgive my rudeness. I have a friend with the same name as you, but he disappeared here 8 years ago." "So. I see," Ryan Sullivan said with an understanding smile, his voice so similar to Ryan Sullivan's, his tone so familiar. "I understand, Dr. Woods. But I think this is the first time we've met." Amy Woods took a long breath. "Let's go. I'll go check on your Mila." Ryan Sullivan suddenly smiled shyly. "Ah, these two must be newlyweds." Mila's eyes were emerald green, filled with tenderness, and she spoke softly and pleasantly. She thanked her in fluent Chinese. "Dr. Woods, you are truly a miracle worker." Ryan Sullivan explained from the side, "I taught her a little Chinese." "I hope you're not laughing at her." "How could I be?" Amy Woods praised, "Your wife is the most fluent foreigner I've ever seen, with the most accurate idioms." "Not at all. Not at all." Mila immediately added, "Dr. Woods overpraises me. I studied for the mountains, but found it too difficult and only dabbled. If I occasionally say one correctly, it's just dumb luck." Amy Woods was deeply impressed. This woman was not simple. Ryan Sullivan went over and gently helped Mila sit up, putting clothes on her. He said, "Dr. Woods was startled by me. She has a missing friend with the same name as me." Mila widened her eyes, like a startled pigeon. She asked, "Really? Does he look like him?" Amy Woods shook her head honestly. "No, I've never seen him in person." Mila said regretfully, "Missing? Things were a mess here 5 or 6 years ago. It's inevitable that friends and relatives went missing." She said too. Her husband, "Fortunately, we all made it through, didn't we?" "Yes." When Ryan Sullivan called, he would say, "Listen, another bomb just went over. Listen carefully, can you hear the explosion?" At that moment, the war was especially real in her ears. She prayed and prayed, hoping that one of the many gods in the sky could hear her prayers. "Please let Ryan Sullivan return safely." But it was no use. The sound of gunfire was so loud that it drowned everything out. When Lily Woods learned that Ryan Sullivan was going to be a war correspondent, she was indignant. "He's not a good man. Why doesn't he think about you?" But how could Lily Woods know that in the heat of summer, while she was studying in the classroom, this person would thoughtfully fan her? In winter, when her hands were too cold to hold a pen, this person would pull them over and tuck them into his clothes. She didn't know that Ryan Sullivan had rejected other girls, saying, "I love Amy Woods, I want to marry her." She didn't know that Ryan Sullivan had confessed while she was asleep, saying, "I've liked you since the first time I saw you in middle school." In that innocent era, boys and girls met under the shade of trees, cicadas chirped happily as they brushed past each other, and walked far away before they couldn't help but secretly look back. Unexpectedly, the other person also happened to turn around. At that time, Amy Woods smiled unintentionally, rippling layers of ripples in her heart. Amy Woods searched online, and in a moment, the news articles about the incident 5 years ago came up. She clicked on the picture and looked at the man named Ryan Sullivan. Ha! It was him! Look at his handsome face and kind smile. It was the current Ryan Sullivan. Amy Woods was very excited and immediately called back home to Ryan Sullivan's former colleague. The other person heard it and shouted out, "Really?" Amy Woods said, "To be on the safe side, I'm afraid we'll have to do a test to be sure." "Okay." The other party said immediately, "I have Ryan Sullivan's DNA report, I'll fax it to you now." He asked again, "Is it just Ryan Sullivan alone?" Amy Woods knew what he meant, and she couldn't help but feel regret. "No, there's no Ryan Sullivan. There's only one miracle." The small hospital suddenly became lively because of the arrival of a delicate guest. Mila was very popular, and during her week-long stay in the hospital, friends and relatives came to visit her every day, never lacking flowers and fruit. Ryan Sullivan was a model husband, bringing homemade soup every day after class to show his concern. The couple's common topic was classical music, and sometimes when Amy Woods came to check on them, she didn't understand at all when she heard them chatting. It wasn't that she didn't like music. She and Ryan Sullivan were both audiophiles, and they only liked soundtracks. For a while, she was obsessed with Space Fortress and almost heard Ryan Sullivan humming "Do You Remember Love" every day. After he had an accident, Amy Woods also often hallucinated that he was humming this song in some corner of the room. Tears streamed down her face every time. Amy Woods asked Mila, "How long have you been married?" "It's been 4 years." Amy Woods was slightly surprised. "Your relationship is really good. I thought you were newlyweds." Ryan Sullivan came to visit every day after work, always bringing new books and magazines, and the lunch boxes were all nourishing, with a variety of styles. Amy Woods joked with him, "Mr. Sullivan should change careers to catering, you'll definitely make a fortune." Ryan Sullivan smiled and pointed to his wife, "I'm not a genius, she's just picky about food and trained me." Mila immediately blushed. Amy Woods had also been loved like this before, and had lived happily with someone. But Ryan Sullivan, are you alive or dead? Where are you? Has your rotten flesh turned into mud? In the place where you fell, did a small tea regrow, also blooming with pure white and fragrant flowers? Mr. Johnson asked Amy Woods, "I heard you're investigating Ryan Sullivan's background?" Amy Woods was surprised. "How did you know?" "Who do you think I am?" Mr. Johnson straightened his back. "The last time I saw his back, I almost called him Ryan Sullivan, brother." Amy Woods lowered her head. "Mr. Johnson, don't think I'm stubborn. Ryan Sullivan died without seeing a body, and I always have a glimmer of hope in my heart." "Still hoping he'll come back, aren't you?" Mr. Johnson laughed at her. "You little girl are so loyal, you've been like this for so many years. Ryan Sullivan doesn't have this blessing. It's too shallow." But they just had to meet, and they just had to fall in love. He disappeared with her love. How could she forget him? Mr. Johnson sighed. "You should have a new beginning." "Who said I don't want to?" Other guys come to inquire. "What, her fiancé died 5 years ago and she hasn't looked for a new one, she must not be over him. Such a woman can't be touched, and if you marry her, she won't be wholeheartedly yours." So they all back down. Over time, it's a vicious cycle. "So you mistakenly took Ryan Sullivan for your Ryan Sullivan? Little Woods, you have to know that this Ryan Sullivan has a wife. You must guard against gossip behind your back." "I know." Amy Woods looked at her hand. The ring on her ring finger was the one she received after Ryan Sullivan's death. Mr. Johnson was full of poetic inspiration. "Time passes. 5 years have passed, and many things have become ancient history." "Who said it wasn't?" 5 years, everything had changed beyond recognition. The past seemed like something she hadn't experienced herself. Amy Woods suddenly felt that something was wrong. That day in the hospital, what did Ryan Sullivan say to his wife? He simply said that Amy Woods had a friend who had disappeared. And how did his beautiful wife respond? She said that the situation in the area was chaotic 5 years ago, and it was inevitable that some people would disappear. How did she know that the Ryan Sullivan that Amy Woods was looking for had disappeared in the area 5 years ago? Hadn't said that. Pushing open the door to the ward, that familiar figure came into view. Ryan Sullivan was sitting sideways on the edge of the bed, feeding his wife soup. When Amy Woods was in college, she was also sick and couldn't get out of bed. At that time, Ryan Sullivan was interning in another city, and she held back from telling him. That evening, she woke up, her whole body aching from the fever, thirsty, but no one was by her side. In the quiet room, only the clock ticked. She looked at the kettle on the other side of the room and finally couldn't help but cry. At this moment, the door suddenly opened, and Ryan Sullivan rushed in like a gust of wind, holding her tightly in his arms. How could she forget him like this? She couldn't make room for anyone else, because she had been so deeply loved, and she knew that she probably wouldn't be loved like this again. She would always remember this love. Ryan Sullivan, like a mother, coaxed his wife to eat. "One more bite, just one bite." Mila made a playful face and said, "There's something weird in this, it tastes awful." "It's Angelica, it's the most nourishing." "Nourishing? Can't you see Dr. Woods is laughing at me? Your health is getting better every day, so she's naturally going to laugh as a doctor. Hurry up, when you get better, I'll take you to America for a vacation. We'll make up for our honeymoon." "Hey, we're an old married couple. What's the point of being romantic?" Mila smiled and punched Ryan Sullivan lightly. The bowl of loving soup that Ryan Sullivan was still holding inevitably spilled. Amy Woods knocked on the door and came in to help clean up. Come to the nurse's station with me. I'll help you borrow a shirt to change into, and I'll have someone take these cloth es to be washed. She borrowed a shirt and pants from Mr. Johnson, returned to the nurse's station, and opened the door without thinking. Ryan Sullivan had just taken off his shirt and turned around in surprise when he heard the door open. Amy Wood's face turned red when she saw his broad, bare shoulders. A nurse passed by behind her, pushing a small cart, and she had to step inside and close the door hastily. She lowered her head and handed the clothes to Ryan Sullivan, her eyes glancing at one spot, and her eyes widened instantly. Ryan Sullivan's body was covered with tiny scars, and there was one large one that almost ran across his entire back. And at his waist, there, was a black spot that she would never mistake. God, do you see that? That's the birthmark that Ryan Sullivan had. Ryan Sullivan smiled awkwardly. Did I scare you? I was injured during the war. Fortunately, it only injured my flesh, and now I'm fine. Amy Woods pointed at his waist with a trembling hand. Ryan Sullivan glanced at it and said, "This is not a scar, it's a birthmark." Amy Woods' face was already ashen, very terrifying. She had to hold on to the table next to her, otherwise she might have collapsed on the spot. Ryan Sullivan immediately reached out to support her shoulders, found a chair for her to sit down, and poured her a glass of warm water, handing it to her. He asked softly, "Dr. Woods, should I go get someone?" Amy Woods immediately shook her head. No. No need. Ryan Sullivan sat down halfway in front of her and asked softly, "What exactly happened, Dr. Woods? Are you not feeling well? Your face is really scary." Amy Woods took a deep breath, and finally found her voice. She asked, "Mr. Sullivan, how old are you this year?" Ryan Sullivan frowned and answered, 29 years old. You were working in the area during the war? Yes. What about before that? I should have been here too. Should? Amy Woods finally heard the words she expected to hear. Ryan Sullivan said very simply, "You saw it. I was very badly injured at that time, and the back of my head was dented. Everyone thought I would die, but I survived. But as a price, I no longer remember what happened before." Amy Woods stared at him blankly. This situation was both familiar and strange. It was common on TV, because it was a story. But in real life, everyone is busy sharpening their heads to fight for survival. Who has the time to be amnesiac? No, amnesia and cancer are the patents of talented men and beautiful women in ivory towers, and are not suitable for Amy Woods and Ryan Sullivan, who are ordinary people buying houses with loans and waiting to get married. Ryan Sullivan looked at her like this and explained to her in detail, "Mila is my doctor. She showed me the documents on my body and told me everything." "Who did she say you were?" "I am Ryan Sullivan, an employee of the same organization as her." Amy Woods shouted in her heart, No, you are not Ryan Sullivan." She was shaking nonstop, her hands and feet were cold. She wrung her hands, suddenly as cramped as a student facing an interview teacher. "Mr. Sullivan, what is your blood type?" "Type A." Ryan Sullivan was also type A. "How badly were you injured back then?" "My face was disfigured. Is that scary enough?" Amy Woods stared at this unfamiliar face. "Who did the plastic surgery for you?" "My wife." She remembered that Mila was indeed a plastic surgeon. "What was the basis for it?" "The photos on my documents." Amy Woods asked tremblingly, "Then, do you have any other injuries or illnesses on your body?" "Oh, last year during a physical examination, they told me that I had my appendix removed." In that instant, Amy Woods seemed to be pulled back to the university campus by a pair of hands. Ryan Sullivan, who was running on the court, suddenly clutched his stomach and fell. She was about to die of anxiety when she was sent to the hospital, but Dr. Thie made a fuss. "It's just appendicitis. Why is everyone so sad?" "Don't worry, a knife can solve it. It was like killing a pig, which made Amy Woods laugh again. 5 years ago, in that quiet early morning, the telephone rang particularly harshly. She complained as she climbed up and answered it. Mrs. Parker's painful and desperate voice seemed to take a century to reach her ears. "Little Amy," they said, "Ryan Sullivan is missing." "How could this be? Can you check? He won't die." "Absolutely not. He said he would come back." She stared blankly at the sky outside the window, illuminated by neon lights all night, actually black with a hint of blood red, terrifying for no reason. She comforted herself that this was a nightmare, and she would grit her teeth and persevere, and there would always be a day when she woke up. But she never thought that this tragedy would turn into a farce. Absurd and ridiculous, by some twist of fate, that happiness slipped through her fingers. She sat by the window of the small room all night, her hands and feet were cold, and her soul had left her body. Amy Woods found the genetic testing department and took the hair taken from Ryan Sullivan's shirt and gave it to a doctor she knew. It was a lie to say she wasn't nervous. She had never faced such a chaotic situation in her life, nor had she put such complicated thoughts into these things. The rain kept falling, and the flowers fell one after another, never ending. The happy clamor of the old campus had long disappeared into the traffic of the city, and the people who left the campus were changing at an alarming rate. What remained unchanged was the person who had been by her side from beginning to end, loving her, caring for her, and holding her like a treasure. What more could one ask for? Ryan Sullivan had planned the future with her like this: "We'll live in this small apartment first. We plan that when the child is 5 years old, we can change to a bigger one. The living room can invite the child's friends to play house. I think American-made car is also good, or should we buy a 4-wheel drive first, so we can drive out for self-funded travel?" So many plans were made, but in the end, they were realized with someone else. Because the war was over, but he didn't come back. She never thought that she would lose him in this way. Amy Woods tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep all night. She watched the sky change from black to light, a pleasing indigo blue. Her heart was empty, and the room was also empty. Tears fell. There was an echo. On the day the report came out, Amy Woods went to visit Mila. The rain had stopped slightly, and a hazy sunlight shone on Mila's soft face. She smiled at Amy Woods, a very dazzling smile. "Dr. Woods, your responsibility makes me, as a doctor, ashamed." Amy Woods put the flowers she brought for her and said, "Good news, you and your child are now very healthy, and you can be discharged in a day or two. I want to celebrate for you, but there are no flowers to buy nearby, so I had to steal a few branches from the garden. Don't tell the gardener." Mila nodded with a smile. "Dr. Woods, you are so beautiful, so gentle and caring. Your boyfriend is so lucky." Amy Woods shook her head. "I'm single." "Is that so?" Mila looked regretful, but then smiled immediately. "Don't be afraid. Our hospital always lacks equipment, but it never lacks young talents. What kind of man do you like? I'll keep an eye out for you." Amy Woods smiled. She said softly, "It's not that, I have a fiancé." "Ah!" Mila exclaimed, "Slip of the tongue." "Slip of the tongue." Amy Woods turned the ring on her finger. "He passed away years ago." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mila said, "I'm so sorry." Amy Woods looked at her and said, "That was 5 years ago." Mila's expression shifted slightly. "What happened?" "He was a war correspondent. He was sent here to cover a story. He was supposed to return in a week, but a bomb exploded near him. That was it." Mila opened her mouth, repeating that several times, unable to finish the sentence. Amy Woods sat down beside her, picked up a comb, and said, "That's all in the past. Come on, let me comb your hair. I envy your long hair so much. Tell me, how do you take care of it?" Mila forced a smile. Your fiancé, is he? Amy Woods asked. You've never permed your hair, have you? It's so straight. Mila said nothing more. Ryan Sullivan walked in, nodded to her, and said to Mila with a gentle expression, "Come and see what I made for you today." He presented a thermos like a treasure. Amy Woods stood up and quietly left. Before the door closed, she couldn't help but take another look. Ryan Sullivan was explaining the dishes to his wife, this one to nourish her blood, that one to beautify her. Here, let me feed you. Amy Woods opened the door to the balcony and walked step by step, her hand against the wall. The humid air was mixed with the scent of flowers and disinfectant. The empty balcony was filled only with the sound of her heavy breathing. As she walked, she suddenly stopped and leaned against the wall, bursting into tears, crying on her knees. It had been half a year since Ryan Sullivan went missing, since she had cried so bitterly. Tears were harmless and could release emotions, so letting them flow wouldn't hurt. But she feared the pain in her heart was too deep and too heavy, not something a few tears could wash away. Shock, disappointment, regret, sorrow, but most of all, unwillingness. There was a time when this person's gaze was always fixed on her alone, as if she were the only person in the world. There was a time when this person listened attentively to everything she said, patiently tolerating her petty temper. This person had even ridden his bike across the entire city just to buy her favorite pastries to make her happy. Every time Amy Woods washed her hair and wiped it dry on the Woods family balcony, she would have the illusion that the next moment, that person would sneak up behind her, reach out and hug her, and spin her around. The small room, approximate 200 square feet, they had bought together with the intention of getting married had remained unchanged for 5 years. Amy Woods might as well light a perpetual lamp at the door so he could find his way back. But at this moment, she understood, times had changed, love was full of holes, and it no longer existed in that person's heart. He wouldn't come back. He was no longer Ryan Sullivan, he only had that body, but it housed someone else's soul. She walked to Mila's room. The sounds of conversation drifted out. She stood outside, listening quietly, listening to Ryan Sullivan's voice describing his tender love for another woman. Familiar tone, familiar words. His habits hadn't changed, he still liked to call his loved one little one. His little one. Who was his little one now? Definitely no longer Amy Woods. Could she wake him up with her own 2 hands? Could she rush in and tell him everything, ask him to come back with her? Amy Woods suddenly felt grateful that they hadn't gotten married and had no children. Otherwise, what kind of tragic soap opera would this be? Otherwise, she would have to tell him that he had a home on the other side of America, and a child was waiting for him to return. Let him choose, let him suffer. Now he didn't have to worry about it at all. He had found another half, had a family. This family had made the choice for him. And she would have to continue searching in the crowd, walking through empty cities, watching thousands of lights, not one lit for her. Once loved so deeply, but didn't get to grow old together. Once so intimate, but finally reduced to strangers. A nurse passed by and asked, "Dr. Woods, aren't you going in?" Amy Woods immediately turned and left. She was afraid others would see her tears. Mr. Johnson finally got the news and was silent for a long time. "Amy Woods, what are you going to do?" Amy Woods didn't answer. "Are you going to tell him?" "I don't know." Amy Woods lowered her head. "One word from me will change their whole lives. It's like a bone that's already healed. I'd have to break it again and reset it. That would hurt a lot. But that bone was set wrong in the first place. But they're living a good life together, and your life is a mess." Amy Woods sighed. Mr. Johnson continued, "You've been living like a walking corpse all these years, while he's been marrying and having children here." "Don't give me that look," Amy Woods exclaimed. "I've been pitted by every friend and relative for the past 5 years. I can't stand being the victim anymore. Mr. Johnson sat across from her, his tone serious. Are you just giving up like this? You waited for him for 5 years. How many 5 years does a woman have? Amy Woods retorted, what do you want me to do? Steal a husband from a pregnant woman? Mr. Johnson, he's Ryan Sullivan, not Leo Parker. His brain damage is severe. Maybe he'll never remember who I am. Am I supposed to wait for him for 50 years and be buried with him after I die? He has a right to know. Amy Woods stood up and paced around the room. I have to tell Mr. and Mrs. Parker. It can't be kept a secret. If the Parkers find out, he's bound to find out too. What about you? Amy Woods hugged herself. I don't dare see him. He doesn't remember me, she choked up, lost and bewildered like an abandoned puppy. Mr. Johnson smiled wryly. But if Ryan Sullivan's beautiful wife knew she was originally the other woman, I wonder what she'd think. Amy Woods suddenly buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. The other woman? She isn't. Only the one who's out of the game is the other woman. She was like a turtle, retreating into her small but incredibly safe shell. Not listening, not thinking. She told herself that this ending was for the best. In those days, she woke up almost every night, vaguely thinking she was dreaming, thinking it was just longing making her ill. But when she looked at the calendar, the truth was right in front of her. The ring sparkled in the dim light, and when she touched her face, she found it wet. The rain in Sunvale, California, continued endlessly. In the desolate afternoon, Amy Woods stood in the small courtyard with an umbrella. Many of the unknown white flowers had been knocked off by the rain, scattered into the mud. But on the branches, there were still buds waiting to bloom, tinged with a green. A past she couldn't bear to look back on, and a brand new life. She sighed, turned around, and saw Ryan Sullivan standing under the eaves. Dr. Woods, you really have a thing for the rain. In this heavy rain, your clothes are getting wet, he said with concern. Come inside, be careful not to catch a cold. Amy Woods walked over, but didn't go in, standing on the steps and looking up at him. Why aren't you with Mila? She's asleep. I don't want to disturb her. Amy Woods's gaze softened. You really love her. Ryan Sullivan smiled. We're an old married couple. What's there to talk about love? Will you continue to settle down here? Mila doesn't think the environment here is very good. We'll immigrate to a country with better educational conditions when our child starts school, he told her their family plans. Relief work is noble, but children need a good environment. You're planning on more than one child, aren't you? Ryan Sullivan smiled shyly. Mila and I both like children. Amy Woods also liked children. She loved seeing that little pink bundle curled up in her arms, snuggling close to her. She had often imagined that one day, she and Ryan Sullivan would be covered in sweat from changing diapers for their child. She holding the baby, Ryan Sullivan holding her, taking a picture together, the whole family smiling foolishly. Those were all dreams she had had in the past. Amy Woods lowered her eyes, hiding her sorrowful gaze. She slowly walked back under the eaves, closed her umbrella, glanced at Ryan Sullivan, nodded, and quietly left. Ryan Sullivan was puzzled behind her. Why was this beautiful and touching woman always so sad? Who would be willing to break her heart? Mr. and Mrs. Parker arrived. Amy Woods went to pick them up. Mrs. Parker grabbed her arm and asked, Amy Woods, is it true? Is it really true? Amy Woods gently and patiently comforted her. Yes, they're waiting for you at the hospital now. Come with me. Mrs. Parker burst into tears. My son, it doesn't matter if he remembers or not, as long as he's alive. Amy Woods took them to the hospital. Mr. Johnson greeted the Parkers, and she didn't follow them. Since Ryan Sullivan no longer remembered her, she was a stranger. It would be too awkward for her to intrude on the family reunion. She returned to the dorm to pack her luggage. She was leaving for another remote city that afternoon to take up a new post. Although she was unwilling, this was indeed the time for her to leave. She didn't want to embarrass Ryan Sullivan, didn't want to stage a family drama. If she still had a little self-love and dignity, she would choose to start her life anew. The weather in Sunnyvale, California, was much warmer now. The sweaters and coats she had brought with her had become a burden. She looked at the thick blanket, which Ryan Sullivan had bought for her with his first salary. She had cherished it for so many years, and after Ryan Sullivan's accident, she often took it out to remind her of him. But her luggage was already overweight, and she didn't know what to do with the blanket. Amy Woods fell on the bed, closing her eyes for a moment. In a daze, she heard someone knocking on the door. She groggily got up. The door opened, and Ryan Sullivan was actually standing outside, his face weathered, his eyes full of tenderness. Amy Woods was stunned and said, "Ryan Sullivan, that really you? Are you back?" Ryan Sullivan didn't say anything, just smiled at her, a smile like a clear sky, with warm sunshine shining down. Amy Woods burst into tears, stepped forward and reached out to touch his face. She kept murmuring, "Ryan Sullivan. Ryan Sullivan." Ryan Sullivan still just smiled at her. In a daze, she heard a knock on the door. Amy Woods sleepily went to open it. Mila stood outside. Heavens, which one was the dream? Mila smiled hesitantly and said, "They told me you're leaving?" Amy Woods took a step back, gesturing for her to come in and talk, but Mila didn't move. She saw Amy Woods look at the packed luggage, revealing a surprised expression. Amy Woods smiled. "I've been here for 2 months and wanted to go to a new place." Mila lowered her head and said slowly, "Dr. Woods, ever since you told me about your fiancé, I've had an idea in my heart. If there's one thing I've done in my life that I feel guilty about, it's this one thing. The kind of guilt that makes me wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat." Amy Woods stood by the window, not saying a word. Mila continued, "At the time, I really thought he was the person on the ID. The situation was too chaotic back then, and the hospital was flooded with wounded people every day. There was no way for us to verify who he really was. I restored his appearance for him, I treated him and helped him recover his health. When I found out he had lost his memory, I lied to him that I was his colleague in order to keep him." Her voice became agitated, her hands clasped together over her stomach. "Dr. Woods, I love him, and he loves me. We're about to have a child." Amy Woods calmly added a footnote to her words, "So you also forgot that this person might have friends and family waiting for him to return in another part of America." Mila was stunned, almost crying, but she held it back. She nodded. "Dr. Woods, you have every right to hate me." Amy Woods shook her head. "I'll explain everything in detail to Ryan Sullivan. I don't want to wake up in a cold sweat in the future." Amy Woods sighed. Mila smiled bitterly. "But you're still going to leave, aren't you?" Downstairs, the driver was honking the horn. Amy Woods picked up her luggage and handed the thick blanket to Mila, saying, "My suitcase can't fit it. Please donate it for me." Mila took the blanket, reluctantly asking, "Dr. Woods, aren't you going to see him?" Amy Woods stopped at the door, not turning around. Mila heard her voice, sad and hollow. "He has forgotten the love of the past. It's better not to meet than to meet." Mila lowered her eyes, burying her face in the blanket. Amy Woods took a deep breath and walked downstairs. Mr. Johnson waved to her from the driver's seat. "I'll give you a ride." Amy Woods put her luggage in the car. As she was about to get in, she suddenly heard someone call her name, a familiar voice. Ryan Sullivan hurried out. "Dr. Woods, you're leaving without saying a word." Amy Woods stared at him blankly. Ryan Sullivan held out his hand. Thank you for your help these past few days. When you get to your new place, remember to keep in touch with us. Amy Woods didn't shake his hand. Ryan Sullivan didn't mind and remained enthusiastic. It's a shame, the rainy season here is about to end. After the weather clears up, there are many attractions worth visiting. Mr. Johnson called out, Amy Woods, it's almost time. Amy Woods took a deep look at him, smiled, and said, Mr. Sullivan, take care. She turned and got into the car. Ryan Sullivan watched them drive away, with only a few white flowers remaining on the shrubs beside him, also showing signs of fading. The rainy season was finally coming to an end, and even the wind was warmer and drier than usual. She was leaving this land where the story had taken place, and the person she loved was staying here. This farewell scene was so simple, yet so vivid. Amy Woods knew she would remember it for the rest of her life. Her whole body felt light, the departure had no weight. Mr. Johnson was silent for a long time, then suddenly muttered, What the hell kind of show is this? Amy Wood smiled faintly and said jokingly, a spring love song. What if he finds out and immediately divorces and comes after you? Mr. Johnson, neither Leo Parker nor Ryan Sullivan is the kind of man who would abandon his wife and children for his own sake. Mr. Johnson shook his head. He must have felt that it was too difficult to be human, that there was bound to be harm in fulfillment, and that nothing in the world was perfect. He said, Amy Woods, you're too rational and too calm when things happen, so you always suffer. But Amy Woods's heart was already clear. Maybe this person will remember everything tomorrow, silently watching the direction she left in, and continue his life. Maybe he will recall the past when his grandchildren are dating girls, travel thousands of miles to her grave, and offer a bouquet of blooming flowers to commemorate that forgotten love. But he was ultimately fading out of her life completely. Where are there so many happy endings in real life? Amy Woods leaned lazily against the backrest. Outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds, and golden sunlight shone through the glass window onto her hands resting on her lap. A pair of plain hands, without any embellishment, only needed to be skilled in operating a scalpel. Still, I say, if I had married Leo Parker and had children, this would definitely not be a story.